Isn't it a beautiful thing to watch history be made? You had a all black alliance formed to make a racist, unnatural allegiance to one another to eliminate all of the non black players for the sake of a race based cause. You know, it just happened to include a Chinese Asian man getting eliminated, a Hispanic woman getting eliminated, and a bunch of white people who didn't say or do anything racist this season, but still, it was for history, and that made it okay. And then when we reached history, when the final six of the cookout achieved its goal, it immediately descended into arguments, with four of the six members arguing with one another in two separate rooms. And then recently, with this eviction, we literally almost had a fist fight because, history was being made. I mean, this is what this season deserves. It's what it deserves. This racist bullshit that has been cheerleaded by Big Brother alumni, by most of the Big Brother podcasters, and by a lot of the woke Big Brother fans. They have cheerleaded a racist allegiance for the 80 plus days that this season has been going on. But now they all of a sudden want to act offended because of the exchange between Kyland and Xavier. You even had one podcaster talking about how it's pathetic and disgusting. Well, I would say a racist alliance in a racist season is pretty pathetic and disgusting. This confrontation is just a part of the season. Now you have all of these people, well, not all of them, some of them are still racially slurring Xavier, but you have others who have been racially slurring Xavier, pretending like they are offended by what occurred last night. Because if you remember, when they showed Xavier's family, his white family, the whole coon thing came up once again. Well, actually, it's never really stopped, but it went into overdrive when that was revealed. Oh, it's not the cookout, it's the barbecue. Well, this is giving me coon energy. Now, these are all racial slurs coming from people who claim to be against racism. And most of the racial slurs comes from so-called black people who love to call other black people this term when they find them disagreeable. And in this instance, they find Xavier disagreeable among other reasons, but for this specific reason is because he has a white family. But, there was a guy by the name of Colin Kaepernick who also has a white family. Now, he doesn't have a black side as far as I'm aware of. It's alleged that he's half black, even though he looks like some Arab. But he was raised by a white family. And they praise Colin Kaepernick. They sell out his jerseys and says he's for the cause. Even though he was adopted into a white family, raised with that white family, and didn't become woke until his career started to decline. Then he grew out his hair, put on his Huey P. Newton costume, and became so blackballed that he got a deal with Netflix where he's retconning his history, pretending that he was into dark-skinned black women. He got a book deal, he got a deal with Disney, and his deal with Nike that still continues. And that's one hell of a blackball. Now he's been made into a martyr without the death part, and he's been enriched beyond his imagination. But again, I highlight that to highlight the hypocrisy of them slamming Xavier for having a white family, but praising Colin Kaepernick. Maybe it's colorism. But anyway, now we have our final three of Xavier, Ozza, and Derek F. And I believe it's a beautiful thing because it comes with the potential of giving this season the final two that it deserves, which is a final two of Derek F. and Ozza, the horizontal alliance. The two people who've been pretty much laying down on their sides, on their backs, for like 90% of the season. And we have a potential for that to happen if Ozza or Derek F wins part two, because, spoiler alert, Xavier won part one. But whoever wins part two could realistically win part three because it's just questions. Now, when the fees return and everything settled down after Xavier's victory, Xavier and Ozza begin to talk. And Xavier, per usual, exaggerated the exchange between him and Kyland. Now, this is a conversation between Xavier and Ozza. Xavier says, "Are you okay?" Ozza replies, "Yes, I'm okay. Thank you for keeping me." And then Xavier adds, "Sorry you had to see part of my thug side today." And Ozza replied, "No, I liked it." And Xavier says, "Sorry, I had to bring that out." And then Ozza says, "No, it's okay." This dude said he brought out his thug side. That was his thug side? Him getting punked by Kyland? Now, I only laugh at this because Xavier has been selling wolf tickets throughout the season. Like earlier in the season, they were having a conversation about Devon and her argument with Paulie. And he swore up and down that if he was Devon, he would have fought Paulie. Just being a bitch. First of all, sticking up for a chick who's a fucking hood rat asshole, who's been insulting him, by the way, on Twitter. But second of all, up here talking about someone needs to be fought with over nothing, because the bitch injected herself in a conversation that didn't involve her. And then he said something about her daughter that wasn't even an insult, and then she got all mouthy about it. But he said he was going to fight Paulie. And Paulie called him out, by the way, on his podcast that he does with his brother. So, I'm hoping, he has to bite and eat those wolf tickets he's been selling. And he also had some wolf tickets for Brent, speaking real bold behind his back. And he even believed that Brent was blindsided, which just goes to show you how clueless this dude is. And even though I call out all of the racialist bullshit that comes from the pro-wokes on BB Twitter, him as an individual is still a despicable simp. His behavior, his pandering behavior, he enables these people to insult him like this. Because they know his type is similar to a David from BB 22 and 21. They won't stand up for themselves. And by them not standing up for themselves, it emboldens these assholes on Twitter to speak as recklessly as they do. So, that's just a side note. But, yeah, I'm hoping that, we get the final two that this season deserves. Because they've been talking about history being made throughout this entire season. And so history will be truly fulfilled if we can get an Ozza or Big D as the winner. Because there would be nothing to brag about with one of those two people winning. Why? Because they laid down the entire season. And they really didn't do a goddamn thing. And so it's fitting that people that didn't do anything, that only moved forward because a racist allegiance happened, it's fitting that one of those two wins. And with Kyland going into jury, obviously bitter. Even if Xavier ends up with Ozza or Derek F sitting beside him, there's still a strong possibility that he could lose, and that would be perfect. And also, what made me laugh was during the confrontation, you heard Chen damn near crying, trying to stop the confrontation. And again, that's what she deserves because she recently did an interview where she was praising this alliance. But this is what you get when you cheerlead an unnatural alliance that was formed based on bigotry and hate, basically. You get people who will want to fight each other. And why? Well, they want to fight one another because they aren't real allies. Kylan wasn't truly working with the people he genuinely wanted to work with. His actual alliance was with Sarah Beth and Derek Zhao. Those are the people he actually wanted to move forward with. And I don't believe any of the Cookout should be invited back because they did a very shitty thing. But if one did have to come back, I would vote for Kyland because Kyland has proven that he will engage with people in confrontation, and he's proven that he's willing to manipulate people in a real intimate way, which quite frankly I find comical. But the racist allegiance bullshit is what I personally detest because it prevented actual gameplay from happening this entire season. People were making illogical moves because they were making moves based on prejudice and bigotry. And I've stated before several times that Kylan himself said he was holding back, that this wasn't a real season. And you had Tiffany and Xavier who said the same thing. All because they wanted to make this racist allegiance. And I'm sure a lot of it was influenced by what the media has been putting out there, with BLM and George Floyd and all that other bullshit. So I wouldn't even be surprised that production encouraged them to form an alliance. I mean, hell, in this season of diversity, they cast 6 black people, so-called black people, right? As if there's no other ethnicities or races that haven't even been on the show before. I mean, have they had a Samoan on the show before? Have they had someone from Vietnam descendants on the show before? I mean, there's a lot of other people they could have added. Just cast like, I don't know, 2 black people and then 2 from other races that haven't even been in the house. But they wanted the black thing because they know some of the most active people on social media, specifically social media platforms like Twitter, is Black Twitter. I mean, they've even they branded themselves as Black Twitter. And as you've seen throughout the season, Big Brother Twitter and Black Twitter has merged a bit, and it's been one chaotic, disgusting mess. Because on top of the most racist season ever, you've had just layers of bigotry attached to that racism. You've had people accuse others of being colorist. The men of the Cookout is constantly referred to as misogynistic. And also, we can't forget that in the very beginning of the season, these bastards actually tried to put cases on Frenchie and Brent. They tried to accuse Frenchie because there was a mugshot of him, but they tried to add on to what his crime was. I forget what it was, but again, they basically try to do some shit to get somebody fucking fired. You know, because he made the nominations that he made, and so that means he should have his livelihood affected in real life. And then, of course, they tried to basically accuse Brent of rape, and a lot of popular Big Brother Twitter accounts add fuel to that fire, which is why, I don't even consider these people as truly being human. I view them as subhuman because they're rat bastards, pieces of shit that really do this kind of nonsense every season. But it's been elevated, especially this season, due to the so-called calls. The calls, which again almost descended into a fist fight. But again, what happened between Kyland and Xavier, it just represents a perfect example of what this season has been. I mean, they fought because they weren't natural allies, and they also fought because Kyland realized he forfeited his real gameplay to be involved with this bullshit, even though in his personal life, he doesn't have a cookout around him. He doesn't have a cookout around him. What he has around him looks like Xavier's white side of his family. And there's nothing wrong with that. The issue comes is when you try to bullshit people for a bullshit cause. And make it seem like, you're Huey P., some, Black Panther from the 50s and 60s, when, in fact, you're of the new Black Panther. The kind that has Colin Kaepernick as a mascot. Basically, phony bullshit artist that makes millions of dollars being, so-called activists. But anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing who will win part 2. I personally believe it will be Ozza, because if part 2 is anything like what it usually is, I don't see the human 8-ball himself being able to move around to answer all of these questions. And I think Ozza knows her stuff, and she's pretty petite, and so she'll be able to move better than Derek F. Unless they're switching up the part 2 where you can be stationary, and they've had part 2s like that, I believe. I think part 2 was like that in season 19. But anyway, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully this season get the winner that it deserves, because it'll be the icing on the cake of a season that was based on racism and no real gameplay at all, while everybody cheerleaded all of this bullshit and then show their blatant hypocritical ass as they defend who they want to defend when it suits them and their fake morality, which occurred recently with Xavier and people defending him against Kyland. But we know they'll continue to go along calling him coon for the rest of the time, because that's what Big Brother 23 has been all about. Layers of bigotry with racism as the cherry on top. BB diversity, gotta love it. History's being made, folks.